All right, welcome to Operation Uranus scenario of Axis and Allies Stalingrad. In this version of the game starts on round 7. Operation Winter Storm is guaranteed to come in on turn 10. The Axis powers have 40 resource points waiting to be spent on that turn and later. Also in this version of the game, this scenario, we've already had one freeze, so the Don River is frozen. The Volga is not yet. The Soviets start with one ferry active, the other two are not currently active, and the Stalingrad city board starts a lot more busy than we saw it when we played the Race to Stalingrad scenario, at least in my last video. So it looks like in this scenario, the Axis has a lot of the kind of northwest, the west, and they're kind of working their way toward the center, crushing the Soviets in toward the center, toward the chemical factory and Pavlov's house and the Red October steelworks. So this will be very interesting. Over on the region board, Operation Uranus is set to begin. You can see that given the random Operation Uranus cards and where I assign them, it's going to be different every time you play. So I think that's pretty cool. But right now, Operation Uranus is set to kind of crush in the flanks of the Axis drive on Stalingrad. But there's a lot more starting on the board than certainly by the midpoint of the game of Race to Stalingrad, and doubly certainly so than by the end of Race to Stalingrad. And you might remember at the end of Race to Stalingrad, we had a really anemic couple of boards. So this will be really interesting. So we're about to start, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, that was the completion of turn 7 in Operation Uranus. So it was the first round we played. We're about to start round 8. On the region board, Operation Uranus did begin in the northwest. They attacked Bolshoi, Serafimovich, and Kletskaya. All three were moderately successful, more so in Bolshoi, but none of the three actually were able to completely wipe the Axis and minor Axis forces there. So they're going to try to grind their way from the north. So no breakthrough there. Looking more towards the center, they also attacked in Rhinoc and Veritaci to try to open up the supply line, because right now, Spartanovka up there is in a pitched battle and the Soviets are unsupplied in the northeastern part of the city. So they had more success in Rhinoc, no hits in Veritaci, and they took some decent hits in Rhinoc too. You can see a Soviet armored unit is all that's left there. So they're going to continue to grind through there. A lot more success in the southern portion of Uranus. They were able to take the Avganerovo station. That's one of the supply line, that's adjacent to one of the supply lines for the Axis forces, which is Verkhny Kumsky. They were also able to absolutely demolish the minor Axis forces in Bekatovka. So they're going to try to do a north-south pronged attack on these forces that are guarding the road to Stalingrad. So middling success in the north. It will be a grind. Directly north of the city, not much success, but in the south, great success. So we'll see how that continues to pan out for the Soviets. On the city board, there was a pitched battle for Pavlov's house. No casualties on either side, so just real locked in the fighting there. One of the missile launchers in Krasnaya Sloboda was able to take out the German infantry in Spartanovka, but since the Soviet forces are unsupplied, they're really weak on the attack, so they just weren't able to take out that last artillery. But you can see there's plenty of Soviet infantry in ambush sites, so I don't think at all that the Germans necessarily have the city in hand, and that's going to continue to be a pitched battle. I think the city is going to be greatly impacted by who controls the supply routes in and out of the city. And if the Germans can fend off the north-south pincer attack from Uranus, especially right here around the city, I think they'll be just fine. So we'll see. Okay, that was the end of round 8. We're about to start round 9. We had a very busy round. The Soviets were able to break through on Bolshoi, defeat the Axis forces there, so they got a path towards the flank of the supply lines of the Axis forces behind the Don River. However, the Axis forces in Saramovich were able to quickly dispatch the Soviet forces there, and I think the thinking there was, well, dispatch them. There was one minor Axis infantry in Bolshoi. He may be able to hold out for at least one battle round, and he was. And then you can turn this force to the left, to the west, to attack the forces in Bolshoi and protect the crucial supply lines. Soviet forces were also able to successfully take Kletskaya, so that could be a two-pronged attack, but Axis will be able to go first, of course, so we'll see what they do if they split their forces there or try to concentrate on one or the other. Again, I think the supply lines of Perelasovsky and Petrovka are far too important to ignore, so I imagine Axis will go west. Otherwise, the battles around the entry points into Stalingrad continue. They are still somewhat stalemated, especially here in Rhinoc and Vertachi. They are still Axis controlled, but the Soviets did make much more headway in the south once more, still fighting over Beketovka. However, they do have the preponderance of forces there, so I think it's just a matter of time. I imagine on this following round, the Soviets will be able to break through and move into Potomnik, and the Axis doesn't have much of an answer for that. Looking over to the city, I realized I made a mistake. I accidentally put an artillery on the ferry on the last round, but it's not frozen yet, so I couldn't have done that, so I moved the artillery back. And on this round, the Soviets spun an infantry, moved them on the ferry. They were able to win victory in Pavlov's house, thanks in no small part to the 4 rocket launchers that were able to take out 2 units. I think it was an artillery and an assault gun. All that was left for the Germans in Pavlov's house was a tank, and the infantry was able to dispatch it at that point. The tank got no hits. So Pavlov's house, that crucial supply line over the Volga, has been secured. The Soviets did make an attack into Barricade Factory. They lost an infantry doing it, partly because the Barricade Factory is a stronghold, so the German infantry was able to roll on 3. And then looking up to Spartanovka, the Soviets were able to defeat the German forces there, and then move out to the north toward Rhinoc and regain supply, since you can trace supply out of a contested zone. So they trace supply up to Ilonivska or Dubovka. So another busy round, but kind of less busy in the sense that there were a lot of battles, less busy in the sense of a lot of movement, not a ton of breakthroughs. Again, the only real 2 major wipings were of the Germans in Bolshoi and the Soviets in Saramovich, respectively. Otherwise, it just remains battle, 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 battle. So again, going into round 9 now, we'll see how the weather turns out. But this has turned out to be just as fun as Race to Stalingrad scenario. But on the next round, after the one we're about to play, round 10, Operation Winter Storm is going to come in, and the Soviets may not have much of an answer for it if they don't start getting more production points in the city or on the region map, mostly in the city. They have so much infantry in the city, and infantry's just not great in the attack, of course. You know, it's great for holding places, but you're going to lose a lot if you're only attacking with infantry. So they really need a freeze. They need to start getting some potentially, artillery over the Volga. So we'll see how that goes. Lots of fun. Okay, we have just finished round 9. We're about to start round 10. There was no bad weather again, so air units did fly. But this upcoming round is Operation Winter Storm. So starting over in the city, the Germans were happy to lose a few resource points to try to barricade the Barricade Factory, so to speak. But the Soviets are trying to push stuff in because they need to capture those strong points in the city in the hopes of achieving a minor victory down the road. So they built a ferry across the Volga, sending more units that way, shifting a bunch from the now secure Pavlov's house to the north along the Volga River. So pitched battle for Barricade Factory continues, otherwise largely static in the city. Neither side just has enough offensive power to really do a whole lot, except for concentrating at one place once at a time. So we're not seeing large-scale offensives throughout the city. There's just not enough offensive power in there. Moving over to the region board, in the north, the Germans attacked both ways, west and east. Soviets held on. Both sides are holding on. You can see there's not much for Bolshoi for the Soviets there, just an artillery piece, and not much for either side in Klitskaya. So we're getting pretty sparse here behind the Don River, and lots of pitched battles just with somewhat weak forces remaining. Unbelievably, the Germans are holding on in Vertachi and Rhinock. Again, the Soviets are throwing all they can at them. Armor, their last remaining fighter, and it's just not breaking through. It's incredible. Just lots of misses on those rolls for the Soviets. But in the south, the rocket launchers took out the last remaining German forces in Beketovka before the Soviets even had to fight on the ground for it. So this stalemate here for the Soviets, they desperately need the support from Beketovka, and they're going to get it soon. However, before I move on to the however, Soviet forces just moving on to take the supply line of Verkhney Kumsky from the Axis powers. But of course, however, with this being round 10 of the Operation Uranus scenario, the Germans on the upcoming round are going to get a ton of reinforcements. Let's see. Right now they got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 5, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70 dollars to spend on what's going to be coming in here from the south, the Operation Winter Storm forces. I don't think they'll have too much trouble clearing out behind the Don and ensuring that the Soviets can achieve a total victory. However, even with all that money, will they be able to get through by then, what I anticipate will be a pretty strong Soviet ring around Stalingrad, potentially even cutting off all the supplies to the German forces still beleaguered in there, breaking through that, and clearing enough of Stalingrad to achieve a total victory, I just don't think is in the cards. I think for both sides, a minor victory is more in the cards. So we'll see if the Operation Winter Storm forces can simultaneously clear out behind the Don, push through the ring around Stalingrad, and occupy enough of the city to achieve a total victory. I think that's out of reach. I think a total victory is probably out of reach for both. So a minor victory might be more in the cards. Now, that'll be a pretty significant force coming in, but, with only 4 rounds left to play, can they get there in time? Yeah, stay tuned to find out. We just finished turn 10. We're about to start turn 11. That was the Operation Winter Storm round, so Army Group Don was formed by the Axis powers. They were able to come up through the south here in Verkhney Kumsky, clear out the 2 Soviet artillery. So they were trying to open a path to be able to come and try to relieve, actually I just caught this. That should be Soviet. Trying to relieve the forces in Stalingrad now, since Stalingrad is unsupplied as of that whole round, since the Soviets were able to take Rhinock, Potomnik, and Vertachi. So Army Group Don going to try to come relieve the pressure and save the beleaguered 6th Army in Stalingrad. The Soviets were able to kind of consolidate their supply lines in those 3 critical territories around Stalingrad. Army Group Don had great success coming in from Tormosin, clearing out through road movement what was left of the Operation Uranus forces west of the Don, along with their minor allies who were also able to clear out Bolshoi. Now, that was a bad weather round, so the Volga did freeze, so there was no air power. The Axis wasn't able to use its air power, but even still, it was able to do what it needed to do west of the Don and south of Stalingrad. That's so we'll see if that's, as they keep getting more money, if they can break into Stalingrad in time to help the forces that are currently there. Now, there were some Axis attacks launched in Stalingrad. As you can see, a Soviet tank moved in from Rhinock and is going to start carving up those unoccupied Axis territories there. So the Axis is going to get a little less money than they would, Soviets trying to rebalance and get more than 4 RPCs per turn. But the pitched battles along the Volga continue. I think the Soviets have enough to continue to hold out there, and they may have enough to keep their iron grip on the city, right? So now I actually may have to go back and do one of these battles. I just realized the Axis power should have been unsupplied during the Soviet attack phase, so I'll go back and fix that before the next round and see if that changed anything. But Soviets looking decently strong. Again, more Army Group Dawn forces are going to continue to come. Now, whether or not that's enough to hold them off in front of the gates of Stalingrad, I don't know. But I think the Soviets have enough going on in there to continue to hold, unless the Axis powers can not only relieve Stalingrad, but break in with sufficient force. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for Axis. So let's see, going on turn 11 right now. All right, we just finished turn 11. We're about to start turn 12. February 1943, Soviets were able to finally dislodge the Axis forces in the Barakati factory. And now the Axis forces in the city are pretty meager, due in no small part to the Axis armor being able to cut off the Axis forces in Barakati factory off from their supply. Now the Axis can probably and hopefully go on the offensive in the city and make it absolutely impossible for what forces are on the verge of breaking in, and make it very, very hard for them. So Soviets were able to counterattack in Rhynok and kind of maintain their supply line into Dubovka, but the Axis may cut that off here shortly. The rocket launchers weren't able to take that Axis infantry, so it might be able to move into Dubovka and make the the Allied artillery in Rhynok out of supply. Army Group Dawn continues its assault. They were able to finish the job in Beketovka. Now that armor is going to move north into Potomac. And of course, that is a fortified zone, so it may take a round or two for Axis to break through. If it takes more than a round, I don't think they've got enough juice to really get in. But if they can maintain one supply line into at least one of these RP, these resource cities, places in Stalingrad, and control all 3 of the Rhynok, Vertachi, and Potomac going in, then I think that's a minor victory for the Axis. So it continues to be really intense. The Soviets, again, are having a real good time inside the city. I think they're looking pretty good. The outskirts, I don't know. We'll see. All right, here goes turn 12. All right, that was the end of turn 12. Here comes the end of February 1943. Last round, round 13. All right, so I was wrong about some of the victory conditions on the last round recap. So basically, the way it works, let me pull it out real quick. Victory conditions. Axis total victory. At the end of any round, control all RP zones on the city board, maintain supply line into at least one RP zone on the city board. That's obviously not going to happen for the Axis. So they got to go for a major victory. At the end of the game, control at least one RP zone. Looks like they're staking their bets on trying to push stuff into Marmay of Kurgan. That's that big hill in the center of the city. And control at least one RP zone, and maintain a supply line into that zone. Now that they have Rhynok, Vertachi, and Potomac well in hand, as long as they can maintain supply, right now out to Vertachi's cut off, but to Potomac is still in supply. So as long as they can maintain that, I think their tentative foothold on Marmay of Kurgan, that should be a major victory for them. As you can see, the Soviets are gearing up an attack on Marmay of Kurgan. Now, when we come to the Allies' total victory, at the end of any round, control Potomac, Vertachi, and Rhynok. Not going to happen, so that's out of the picture. How about major victory? At the end of the game, control Potomac, Vertachi, Rhynok, and all 6 fortified zones on the city. Well, they're trying to, I don't know if they're going to be able to get all 3 of those and all 6 fortified zones. That doesn't seem plausible, so they're going for an all for broke, at least to maintain some dignity, all of the 6 fortified zones on the city. So what's remaining? Marmay of Kurgan, they got Orlovka with a tank blitz over there. That would make 6. They have the other 4. Now, if they can't achieve that, and the Axis can't achieve a major victory, which we'll see. Then whoever controls Potomac. Right now, that's the Axis. That seems unlikely to change to me. The Allies just can't move quickly enough to do it. So I think it's going to end up being an Axis minor victory. But again, Soviets are trying to go all for broke for at least those 6 fortified zones and save some dignity at least. This has been a great game, and let's see how this last round goes. That is it. That is the end of round 13. And when you look at that, the Soviets bought 1 tank and tried a desperate attack against Potomac. Axis had 1 tank there. They were both killed, so it retained Axis control in Potomac. That was going to be the tiebreaker, but I think the Axis won a major victory. The Allies were able to do a large assault to try to take every single RP back and make sure it wasn't Axis. They were able to successfully do it everywhere, even Mamayev Kurgan, except Army Camp. The Axis maintains control and has a supply line out through Gumrak and out through the Potomac supply line, which means that is an Axis major victory. Control at least 1 RP and maintain a supply line, 1 RP in the city. So, wow, what an awesome end to an absolutely awesome game. The Soviets gave it their absolute all at the end, and they came so close. 2 armor left in the Army camp. The lack of air power by the end for the Soviets just made it so hard, but man, oh man, did they come close to denying the Axis its major victory. Now, with how things went in Potomac, it still would have been a minor victory for the Axis, even if they had taken the Army camp, but gosh, what an effort. If I could have done anything different with the Soviets, I probably would have focused more on I didn't realize how long of a shot it was going to be to dislodge the Axis from all of their RPs in the city. And as a result, I probably would have tried to focus on maintaining more of a force in Potomac instead of splitting it into Vertachi, and maybe I would have let the Germans come into the city. So maybe I would have played that different with the Soviets. But gosh, what a game. An incredible, incredible close game. I got nothing but good things to say about this one. So thanks for sticking around for another recap. This was the Operation Uranus scenario. Again, ending in an Axis major victory. Control at least 1 RP zone in the city, just 1. Maintain a supply line out, and they do. But God almighty, what a battle. See you next time.